This is the most driver-centric small BMW, while this is the most driver-centric small Porsche. They cost the same, they have almost identical performance, so which one is it to be? BMW M2 CS or Porsche 718 Cayman GT4?
Before we get started, have you subscribed to the CarGurus YouTube channel yet? We post new and used car reviews, helping you work out which car is right for you. Go on, tap that subscribe button.
The CS badge means this is the fastest, most focused M2 to date. You can tell it's the CS because it's got carbon fibre all over the place. The splitter at the front, the roof, there's a lip spoiler at the back, and the diffuser as well. However, all the really big important changes are beneath the skin.
The tyres are very grippy, track-focused Michelin Cup 2s. They wrap themselves around lightweight forged wheels. The suspension has been reworked entirely. The M2 CS sits a little closer to the road than the M2 Competition. There's more negative camber at the front, and adaptive dampers are standard equipment. This is the first time they've been available on an M2. The 3-litre twin-turbo straight-six now develops 444 brake horsepower and 405 pound-foot of torque. BMW quotes a 0 to 62 time of 4.2 seconds.
The 718 Cayman GT4 we know very well by now. It's brilliant. It's a more rounded car than the original Cayman GT4 and maybe fractionally less exciting to drive because of it, but it's still really good. You can tell, compared to the M2 CS, that it's a more inherently sporting car. After all, it's only got 2 seats and an engine right in the middle.
It's also 80 kilograms lighter than the M2 CS. It has better weight distribution, a lower centre of gravity, more aero, so what's the trade-off? You'll have to make do with 2 rather than 4 seats. That aside though, the GT4 isn't a great deal more demanding to use every day. Its 4-litre normally aspirated flat 6 develops 414 brake horsepower and 310 pound-foot. Porsche says it'll hit 62 miles per hour in 4.4 seconds. The two cost almost exactly the same, both just over £75,000. 6-speed manual transmissions are standard fit all round, but dual-clutch gearboxes are available in both.
I've always liked the M2's cabin. I just feel kind of cosy in here. And I like the seating position. The CS-specific stuff does make it feel quite special in here. I'm talking about the Alcantara here, down here as well, and on the steering wheel. Although, the steering wheel itself, the rim, is really thick. It's a bit too fat for my hands. And while I'm at it, why has BMW taken away the armrest? I like an armrest. Now I have nowhere to rest my arm. This thing is a bit too low. Does that really save weight?
These chunky sport seats are borrowed from the M3 and M4 CS. The clever thing about the M2 is that it's always been much more practical than most 2-door sports coupes. It's got usable rear seats, a good boot, and in BMW's iDrive, one of the most intuitive infotainment systems out there. You also get all the comfort and convenience equipment you could possibly need.
Right away, the GT4 feels much more purposeful inside. These optional bucket seats, for instance, they're very different to the powered leather chairs in the M2 CS. You sit much lower in this car, you peer through a much slimmer windscreen, and you catch sight in the rearview mirror of a tall rear wing.
This may be a more uncompromising sort of sports car, but it's no stripped-out road racer. The cabin quality is very good, there's plenty of storage space between the 2 boots, the Porsche communications management system is easy to use, and you get plenty of kit in here too. Nonetheless, in terms of usability and practicality, the BMW is way out in front.
The M2 CS feels very usable in normal driving as well. This one's got the manual gearbox, but if you prefer, you can have a dual clutch gearbox that will change gears for you. You can also have easygoing dampers and very light steering by pressing these buttons down here, and configured that way, it's actually very easy to drive. It's nothing like as spine-crushingly hard riding or as noisy in here as that very rowdy exterior styling might make you believe.
On a damp day like today though, you have to be wide awake. With so much power and aggressive track day tyres, there isn't a huge amount of traction.
We'll put the powertrain into sport and then just sort of hold on a day like today. It's a bit of a wild ride in here. You're constantly activating the traction control system because in these sort of dampish conditions, traction isn't great. It's good in the dry, but not today. The engine is properly powerful. 444 brake horsepower, it feels every one of those, and it's a good, sharp, responsive turbo engine as well. Loads of torque. It sounds pretty good, not really musical, but pretty good. And the gear shift, that's typically BMW. It's a bit rubbery, quite knuckly and notchy, but it's a good, direct, mechanical feeling shift with a good rev match as well.
The M2 Competition, cheaper by £23,000, has a great powertrain as well. So what are you paying for?
This is a sharper and more immediate car overall. It's more responsive. You've got a keener front axle with more direct feeling steering. There is better body control, but it still does that typical M2 thing of squirming about on its springs a little bit. So this car is better to drive than an M2 Competition, but I don't think it's quite better enough. I'm not sure you're getting your money's worth. So it's a marginal gain for a lot more money. And given the extra money that you are spending, I would expect the damping on this car, the suspension, to be beautifully resolved over a very rough road surface. And it's not really. It's okay. It's not bad by any means, but it's not brilliant. There certainly aren't Porsche GT levels of brilliance on display.
The Cayman has the kind of magical damping I'd been expecting of the M2 CS, but we'll get onto that in a moment.
Let's talk everyday stuff. This latest 718 Cayman GT4 has got lighter steering than the previous GT4 and a much lighter clutch pedal. And those two things just make it much less demanding to use in normal day-to-day driving. And how does it compare to that M2 CS? It's got a similar kind of ride quality, tense, but not back-braking. In fact, a long way from being back-braking. However, this Porsche is a less refined car overall. I'm having to raise my voice just because there's so much more wind noise, more road noise, much more noise from the engine as well, everything.
There's a lot to be said for a torquey, turbocharged engine, but once you've experienced a revvy, normally aspirated one, you won't want to go back.
Sadly, these engines are a dying breed nowadays. This latest 4-litre, it maybe doesn't sound quite as sensational as some Porsche GT engines. That's because of the particulate filters in the exhaust, just sort of muffling the soundtrack a little bit, but compared to a turbo engine, it's just in a different league. I love that it builds and builds to a crescendo at 8,000 RPM, rather than, like a turbo engine, giving you everything straight away through the mid-range. It just means that you chase that red line, enjoy the soundtrack, and just have a great time revving the engine all the way out. And while you're at it, you'll enjoy the manual gear shift as well. It's one of the best in the business. So sweet. But what a shame, the gearing is as long as it is.
Never mind power or performance, the best thing about the GT4 has always been its wonderful driving dynamics.
It's still one of the best handling cars you can buy. It's got chassis balance to burn. It steers well. It's super agile. But what really impresses about this car is the very clever blend of pliancy over bumps and iron-fisted body control. I also love how much grip and traction it squeezes out of these tyres. They're used as the same Cup 2 tyres as that BMW, but it somehow just squeezes so much more out of them. If the M2 CS had suspension that was as well resolved as this GT4's, this would be a very close contest.
But it isn't, which means the 718 Cayman GT4 wins. It's just more rewarding to drive, both because of its howling engine and its sublime chassis.
So well done, Porsche. But you know what? The M2 CS is the best driver's BMW for a very long time. It's fantastic. But is it £23,000 better than the also fantastic M2 Competition? No, it's not. Thank you for watching this Car Gurus video. Please remember to comment below, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and also check out cargurus.co.uk, which is where you'll find a great deal on your next used car from a top-rated dealer.